I hate to travel. I especially hate to travel for work. About a year ago, I had to travel somewhere that was only 3 hours away from my job. The area I had to go is considered beautiful by the people who visit. I thought this would be a great excuse to bring my wife with me. She hates when I travel for work, so this seems like a good opportunity to include her. I figured she could enjoy the sights, go hiking, shop, or just sit around the house. Either way, I'd be around every afternoon and night for us to do whatever she wanted. We rented this cute little house that was mostly secluded. Not like in the middle of nowhere, but definitely separated from the other houses by a bunch of trees. That first night we arrived, we looked around the house, and I remember my wife saying that she would love to buy a house like this. Even though it was small, it had a large basement that was filled with storage. Little did I know that our short trip was only going to get worse from here. That first morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. to get ready for work. After I turned my alarm off, the first thing I noticed was that my wife wasn't in bed with me. That caused me to jump out of my bed with a little fire in my step. I went out into the kitchen, and she was sitting on one of the bar stools drinking coffee and scrolling on her phone. When I asked her why she was awake, she told me that she couldn't sleep. She woke up in the middle of the night. When she rolled over, she thought she could see someone standing in the corner of the bedroom. She tried to squint and focus her eyes, but it was too dark to be certain. She rolled over and couldn't get back to sleep. She said she almost fell asleep at one point, but thought she heard a noise from the same corner, and after that, she was wide awake. She said she just couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. At 5, she got up, made coffee, and had been sitting out there ever since. I felt terrible for her. I could see in her face that she was exhausted. I could even see that she was still a little scared. I got ready for work, and before I left, I asked if she was going to be okay. She told me that she was going to get ready and go explore the town while I was at my work obligation. She didn't want to stay at the house alone longer than she needed to. As I was getting ready to leave, she was laying out clothes on the bed for after her shower. I kissed her goodbye, and she jumped to the shower. According to her, when she got out of the shower, she noticed that her clothes were slightly different from how she left them. Instead of being folded neatly and stacked on top of each other, they were half folded and just thrown into a single row. She was on edge, but said it must have been her imagination. She got dressed quickly, but couldn't find her socks. She knew she had left the socks out, but now they weren't there. She felt like she was going crazy. She grabbed another pair and ran out of the house. She Ubered to town since I had the car. I could tell something was off. When she was texting me, I was getting these one-word answers, and that's not like her. I got out of my work meeting early, so I met my wife for lunch in town. She didn't look well. This is where she told me about the clothes situation and how her socks were just magically missing. I didn't know what to say. I believed her, I just didn't have a solution or idea what could be happening. Since I was done with work for the day, we spent the rest of the afternoon in town and had a great time. That night, we had dinner at the house, and my wife looked much better. Whatever weirdness was happening before and bothering her looked like it was over now. In the middle of that night, she woke me up. She told me she heard a weird noise. As soon as she told me, I could hear it as well. It sounded like someone walking around in the house. I could see her shaking. She begged me not to leave, but I needed to know if someone was in the house. I quietly walked through the house, and the only thing I noticed out of the ordinary was that a closet door was open. I know this is stupid, but I assumed the door just opened on its own. I know it's unlikely, but I've had doors do that before. I even rationalized in my head that the sound we heard must have just been the door opening. I even looked inside the closet just to be sure, and it was empty. I told my wife the house is clear, and that we had nothing to worry about. She had it in her mind that something wasn't right. She couldn't sleep. I decided to stay up with her for the rest of the night. That morning, I got ready for work, and she also got dressed. She didn't want to stay 1 second in that house without me. We met up for lunch again, and she asked if we could go back and pack our things so we could leave. I felt terrible because I had to tell her that we needed to stay one more night. The next day, I had one more meeting in the morning that I couldn't miss. This wasn't the trip I wanted for us. The thought of staying in the house one more night for her was crippling. I offered to get us a hotel room, but because I spent so much on the house, she agreed to tough it out one more night. When we got back to the house, we packed everything up so we could leave right after my meeting in the morning. We ordered a pizza that night and sat in the living room for a while. I could tell that she didn't want to go to sleep. We ended up playing this trivia game on my phone for a while. Every so often, we would hear this noise coming from the basement. Every time we heard it, my wife would crumble. I tried telling her that it must be the house just making noises, but she couldn't accept that. While we were sitting there, I decided to go and check the basement again. She begged me not to, but I told her that I wanted to prove that the house is safe and that she had nothing to worry about. I went down there and looked all around the room. There were boxes of storage everywhere. There was only one light, and it wasn't a good one. It gave off a dim yellow glow. Just as I was about to head back upstairs, something caught my eye. I turned back around, and standing in the corner of that room was a man in a red hat. He was standing so still that I swear I thought it was a hat rack or even a mannequin. I moved a little closer, and the man blinked. I freaked out and ran upstairs. I told my wife to get to the car right away, and I'll grab the bags. We had 3 bags in total. I grabbed 2 bags and threw them outside. My wife loaded the bags into the car as I ran inside to grab the final bag. I ran to the bedroom, grabbed our chargers out of the wall and the last bag. As I was running to the door, I noticed that the basement door was open, and the closet was now slightly ajar. I took a deep breath, and I sprinted past the closet and the basement door. I literally threw the bag in the back seat of the car and drove off. I called the rental manager and told them that someone was in the house. The woman was arguing with me, trying to tell me that I was mistaken. I don't even know if she followed up on what I said. I got so angry that I hung up the phone. Thankfully, we were okay, but just because we made it out unscathed doesn't make it any less scary. This man was literally wandering around the house with us all weekend. I believe my wife without a doubt did see someone standing in the room. It was most likely that guy in that basement. I don't even want to think about what this guy wanted with us, besides my wife's socks. I know I could have pursued this further, but I just let it be. Having your own house to stay in while you travel is cool and everything, but I honestly think I'm going to stick to hotels for a while. They may be scary as well, but at least there, you expect to have people around. People that hopefully won't be in your room watching you sleep. I like to travel, but I don't like to travel alone. So sometimes I'll pay the way for the girl I'm seeing at any time to accompany me. One of the more memorable trips was my trip to Costa Rica with this girl Julie I was seeing. We stayed at the Four Seasons, a damn beautiful resort in every way, one of the nicest places I've stayed. The trip was memorable, not just for its beauty, but the insanely weird and disturbing experience we had towards the end. We were staying there 4 nights, which, trust me, already cost me a pretty dollar. The place was not cheap, but the amenities were great. Life was honestly amazing for the first 3 days. On night 3, late at night after we ate dinner and sat on the beach watching a fire show, the pool and public area slowly started to clear out until it was just us awake. We decided to run to the room to grab the bottle of tequila we had and a few mixers and bring it to the hot tub by the pool. The hot tub was covered in just about every direction by trees and plants, minus the narrow opening to get in and out. There was also a waterfall in the hot tub that made enough noise where we could be as loud as we wanted. We had some fun drinking and whatnot in the hot tub, but it was interrupted when I noticed through the plants someone was on the other side, creeping. It wasn't a person just walking the walkway. Someone was crouching down as if they were spying on us in the hot tub. I shouted hey, and then got out of the hot tub, which, let's face it, getting out of a pool or hot tub takes a few seconds to do. By the time I was out on the concrete and on the walkway, I saw someone hurrying away before turning the corner and disappearing. Julie was telling me to come back and leave it alone, but I ran ahead and turned that corner that the man had just turned. When I did, I saw nothing but an empty, dark trail toward the units, actually in the direction of our unit too. When I went back to the hot tub, Julie and I had a mild laugh about it, but really the vibe was dead because we didn't feel like we had privacy anymore. We got some towels and walked back to the room. So the way back from the pool section to the units, you had to walk a path that's pretty dark at night. It was right between the buildings to one side and jungle on the right. When we got like directly across from our unit, which was on the first floor, to the right in the jungle, we heard rustling. It's a jungle and there's animals, so you'll hear rustling everywhere, but this rustling stood out because it sounded bigger and more intense. It sounded human-made. Julie was scared and said, "Let's go in, please." I told her to go and gave her the wooden key card. I took a closer look into the jungle, and I started to hear this buzzing sound. It didn't sound like a bug or animal. It sounded like a human making a low grumbling or buzzing noise with their throat. Whatever or whoever was in there scattered away deeper into the jungle, and I was left with my heart in my throat. I hurried to follow Julie inside of the room and slammed the door shut. She didn't hear the buzzing sound, but she heard the scurrying away. It felt like someone was here stalking us now. We just went to bed. They couldn't get into a locked room. The next day, while we were lounging by the beach, we told one of the workers about the weird encounter last night, just as a warning for other guests and workers about the strange behavior. We stayed there for a few hours, and during that time, a man dressed as an employee came up to us with a camera and told us to smile and pose, so we did. He took a picture, then smiled and said thanks, and he walked away. We watched, expecting him to go up to other people or couples and take more pics, but when we looked up again, the guy was completely gone. Also worth noting, every other worker at this place was Costa Rican. This dude was white, which, listen, that's not the craziest thing ever, but, this dude was whiter than us. Julie and I noted that amongst ourselves. Skipping ahead to that night, things were nice. We got dinner again, watched the sunset, explored around a little more, and relaxed. We had an early flight the next morning, so we called it pretty early. We were exhausted and fell asleep pretty easily. However, I woke up to a still dark room. It had to be early hours of the morning, maybe 12 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. I woke up facing the patio. Our suite had a patio with a big sliding door, and the patio was screened off to prevent bugs getting in. We left that door open at night to hear the sounds of the animals and the waves outside, but I heard something else out there. I thought for sure it was the sound of a camera beeping as it took a picture. I was like 30% sure of it, until I heard it again. It was the shudder and beep of a camera. I sat upright, and I could see a silhouette standing on the other side of the screen in the patio. I shouted "hey" again, sounding angry, but deep down terrified. All I saw of this person was their black silhouette, and I watched as their silhouette ran away into the darkness. Julie woke up, and I told her the truth of what I saw. I slammed the patio door shut, and I called the front desk. I made a very loud and anxious report of what just happened and asked them to send someone right away. An employee came 10 minutes later, and I told them everything about the stalker the night before, the man with the camera on the beach, and now this. The guy said they don't have employees walking around taking pictures, which confirmed that it was the same person. In fact, it might have been the same person stalking us the past 2 days. I demanded a new room because we didn't feel safe. They also said they'd check all the video surveillance from the past 2 days. We were moved to another suite closer to the front hall. We kept the patio door in this one shut, obviously. We woke up early the following morning for our flight. We had a shuttle service offered from the resort to the airport. While checking out at the front desk, they showed us the video footage of the man who was stalking us. He was creepily walking around the resort. He only took pictures of us based on the videos we were shown. It was the most horrifying, confusing thing. We couldn't stay for too long because we were in a hurry, but they told us if they found the man, action would be taken. We were just relieved to be leaving there. I followed up with the resort a few days later, and they apologized for not having any updates, which was disappointing. I don't see Julie anymore, but this was a really crazy and disturbing story the two of us share that I sometimes want to reach out to her about just to talk about again. I hate reliving this story, but I feel like it's so crazy that I need to share it. Last year, I got a week and a half off from work, so I decided to travel back home to see my parents. I work in South Carolina, but my family still lives in Massachusetts. It's not right around the corner, but it's an easy drive nonetheless. My parents are older and retired. They don't get to leave the house much because my dad hurt his back when he was still working. My genius idea was that I was going to drive throughout the night and surprise my parents in the morning. I only told my brother I was coming home, just so somebody knew. Usually, I hate driving at night, but I found that this specific drive is way easier overnight. There just isn't that much traffic, so I can throw something on to listen to when I'm chilling. My least favorite part of the drive is when I have to go through Pennsylvania. No disrespect to my people in Pennsylvania, but that state just feels like it never ends. It's all mountains and winding roads. Not to mention, I feel like every time I drive through PA, it's so foggy that I feel like I'm driving through an endless wall of white. This trip was no different. I was white-knuckling my way through until I came across a detour sign. Apparently there was an accident, so I was being redirected off the highway. I continued driving for a while, and I felt like I was lost. It was just a dark, foggy road. There was no sign of life anywhere. Of course, my phone didn't have service either, so I couldn't even use that to figure out where I was or where I was going. It had been hours since I left South Carolina, and I was exhausted. I was looking for a gas station or even a rest stop. I just needed to shut my eyes for a second, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it on the side of this desolate road. Something about driving in the fog and focusing extra hard makes me super tired. I started to doze off purely because of exhaustion. I should have pulled over as soon as I started doing the head drop, but I thought I could hold on a little while longer. Well, I couldn't. I dozed off for a second too long, and I lost control of the car. I jerked the wheel, but it was too late. I hit the guardrail, and I just kept going. My car rolled into a ditch, and thankfully rolled back to an upright position. I was shaking. That was the most terrifying moment of my entire life. If you've ever been upside down in a car, you'll know what I'm talking about. I sat there for a few minutes trying to catch my breath. I grabbed my phone to see if I had service yet, but it wouldn't matter if I did. My screen was destroyed in the crash. While I was sitting in the car, I didn't know how bad the damage was on the outside. I tried to drive the car out of the ditch, but it was completely stuck. There was no moving it. Because of the angle of the car, I could barely get my door open. When I got out of the car, I crawled out of the ditch. I stood there in amazement, looking at the damage to the car. I wanted to crawl under a rock. I had no idea what I was going to do. A few minutes later, I was sitting next to the car, basically grieving on the inside. While I was sitting there, I saw two bright headlights coming through the fog. I thought about flagging them down, but ultimately, I decided to just stay quiet. The truck drove by slowly. It was 20 feet or so in front of me, and it started to reverse back toward me. When they were right next to me, they rolled down the window. It was an older couple inside the truck. The woman was in the passenger seat, and she made a comment about how I looked like I needed some help. I didn't answer right away. They seemed very nice, but this was the first car I'd seen on this road, and it was also the middle of the night in nowhere, Pennsylvania. Nice or not, I was a little uneasy about this. I also don't want to be that guy, but they didn't physically look like the most inviting people. She asked me again if I needed help, and I just nodded. The large man got out of the vehicle and grabbed a chain from the bed of the truck. While he was doing that, the woman got out of the truck and kept inching closer to me. She smelled horrible. The way she was inching toward me was making me move closer to the truck. It was like she was bullying me to move closer. She was talking about the land, and then she started on a government rant. I just kept nodding and agreeing with her. I just wanted to see these people pull my car out of the ditch. She was literally bumping into me while she was ranting. Eventually, I was standing right outside the back of their truck. She had basically forced me back there. She stopped ranting and then smiled. She told me that she wanted to show me something really cool in the bed of the truck. I told her that it was okay, and I just wanted to watch him pull my car out and make sure he didn't need any help. Every time I tried to step away, she would cut me off. She just kept telling me that I really needed to look in the back of the truck. Then I noticed the man with the chain coming from the other side of the truck. Before I knew it, both of them were moving closer in on me. I turned around and noticed a tarp in the back of the truck. Something was clearly underneath it, but I didn't want to find out what it was. When I had my back turned, looking at the tarp, the woman yelled the name Paul. A third person emerged from underneath the tarp holding a knife. He was a younger man, and he attempted to grab me with his other hand. I still don't know how, but I was able to dodge him by basically falling back to the ground. While I was on the ground, the woman started to yell frantically, screaming at the other two men. I got up, and I started to run as fast as I could. I ran into the woods instead of staying on the road. I didn't want to take the chance of these insane locals chasing me down with a rifle or something like that. The younger guy chased me into the woods, but thankfully I was able to outrun him. I hid in the forest for a while. Since I didn't have a phone, I have no idea how long I was actually hiding. It felt like hours, but I'm sure it wasn't that long. I thought I heard footsteps the entire time I was hiding. It was probably just the normal sounds of the forest at night, but I didn't want to risk it. Just when I was getting ready to head back to the road, I heard the voice of the old woman. She kept calling for me, referring to me as Sonny Boy. She wasn't right next to me, but she was close enough that I could hear her. Close enough that, if I moved, she would hear it. She was shouting in the woods that everything was okay and that I could come out. She said that they got my car out of the ditch and that they didn't want to scare me. I may be a fool, but I didn't fall for this. I held my breath and hoped that she would walk in the other direction. A while longer had passed, and I hadn't heard anything for a while. I snuck out of the woods and my car was still in the ditch. Clearly she was lying. All of my doors were open and my bag was torn apart. I tried to take an inventory of all my stuff, but most of it was gone. It also looked like they used the knife to cut my seats up. Their truck was gone, but I didn't want to stay with my car. I had a feeling they would be back if I stayed. I walked for a long time until I eventually made it to a 24-hour gas station. I went inside and tried explaining to the cashier what happened. I was a mess. The cashier wouldn't let me use the phone, but he did call the police. When they showed up, they called my parents. It took a few hours, but my brother finally showed up to pick me up. Unfortunately, the police were almost no help. I was happy to be driving with my brother in the middle of the day. I can't even imagine what the intentions of those backwoods freaks were. I don't think they just wanted to rob me. I felt like whatever they wanted, it was worse. My parents were surprised when I got home, but obviously not for the right reasons. That was the last time I've driven anywhere far at night alone, and it will most likely be the last time I ever do that drive again. When people think about traveling, oftentimes they think about traveling somewhere with a beach. That's because most people need a break from their job or school to get away, and what better place to unwind than on a nice, relaxing beach? This story, unfortunately, was not a relaxing getaway. A couple of years ago, my girlfriend Allie and I took a trip down south to enjoy some much-needed vacation time. We both work as nurses, and any nurse will tell you, sometimes you need a break. We live in New Hampshire, which is beautiful, but we wanted some of that southern sun. We booked a trip to Key West, Florida. Allie hates to fly, so we made the over 24-hour drive to Florida. Because we had so much time saved up for vacation, we took 2 weeks off, so the drive wasn't nearly as bad because we made several stops on the way. We got to Florida a few days later, and we were blown away by how amazing our resort was. We were right by the ocean. The trip was everything we needed. Most of the trip served its purpose until one terrifying night. Our last night in Key West showed me that it doesn't matter where you are, things can happen out of your control. Allie and I were lying on the beach watching the moon reflect off the water. It was one of those nights where the light from the moon reflecting off the water was literally bright enough that it didn't even look like it was nighttime. We had a large beach towel on the sand, and Allie was lying in my arms. We didn't know this at the time, but I actually had her engagement ring in my pocket. This was going to be our big night. I started to be romantic and sweet, feeding her mushy lines. At first, she was loving it. Then I noticed she got quiet. It was like she wasn't responding at all. For a second, I thought she might have fallen asleep. I asked if she was still alive, and she apologized for getting quiet. She said she got distracted by two people who were standing kind of close to us. She said it looked like they were staring at us. I sat up a bit and looked for the two she was talking about. Just as I sat up, we saw the two people walk up to us. It was an objectively beautiful girl, but she looked off for some reason. She had wild curly hair, and from what I could see of her eyes, they looked very dark. She had just a beach cover-up over her bathing suit, and she was with a man. I assume it was her boyfriend because she was holding his hand in a loving way, almost like she was leaning on his arm. He had a huge beard with long brown hair that was pulled back in a bun. He was wearing a red flannel that was unbuttoned with no shirt underneath, and just plain bathing suit shorts. Even at night, it was very warm for a flannel. Once they got over to us, they just stood there. They were standing uncomfortably close. Because we were basically lying down, they were standing over us, both of them just looking at us, smiling for no reason that I could think of. Finally, Allie said, "Excuse me, can we help you with something?" The woman, still smiling, said in a slow, soft voice, "You two are quite beautiful, you know." I was completely speechless and at a loss for words. My girlfriend just said, "Thanks, you can leave us alone now." Allie's one to speak her mind. Maybe it's the nurse mentality in her, but she doesn't take any crap. The woman looked at me, and then at Allie, and then said in a haunting voice, "No thank you." All while this was going on, she still continued to smile. Her boyfriend just stood there, stiff and not moving, but still smiling. After a moment, another couple came over. It was late in the night, so there weren't very many people around. I thought they may have been coming over to help us. I'm sure our body language wasn't exactly welcoming. I couldn't have been more wrong. The couple came over, and again were standing right over us. Just like the other two people, both of them were smiling. This woman also had a cover-up on, but was sporting some pigtails that were not even close to symmetrical. Her boyfriend had really curly, shaggy-looking hair. The woman from before looked up at them and said, "Look, a new couple." I didn't know if I was being pranked by the locals or if this was real life. I know they weren't doing anything particularly threatening at this point, but my alarm bells were screaming. Nobody stands this close to complete strangers unless they're up to something. The unsettling smiles and stoic posture just didn't have a good vibe. I was pretty unsettled, and these four people just kept inching closer and closer to Allie and I. They had gotten so close that the one girl's foot was touching my leg. I could tell Allie had hit her breaking point. I was trying to think of something to do. I finally stood and stepped up to one of the guys and said, "Take one more step." I thought maybe if I stepped up to them, they would back off. I'm a bigger guy, but I'm not very intimidating. Allie always called me a lovable teddy bear, not exactly someone who inspires fear. All four of these beach lunatics laughed. I was angry and annoyed, but I almost felt comforted by the laugh. I was thinking maybe the laugh was confirmation of this being a joke. Once again, I was wrong. While the others continued to laugh, one of the guys lunged at me. I had no time at all to defend myself. Both men started to beat me up, and I couldn't do anything. I was lying in the sand, just hoping the ring didn't fall out of my pocket. While this was happening, I could hear Allie screaming, and both girls just sat there and laughed. She tried to intervene, but the second girl pushed her down. The two guys then picked me up and slammed me down in the sand next to Allie, and with the blink of an eye, all their smiles turned into faces of anger. One of the men started to fumble his way through an inside pocket of the red flannel. Even though I didn't see it, I knew he was looking for a pocket knife or some other kind of weapon. Somehow, I had the mindset to pull off an unthinkable move. I don't know what came over me in the moment, maybe fight or flight, but I kicked the ankle of one of the girls because she was still so close to me. It was a hard kick, so she stumbled. Her stumbling in the sand distracted all of them for a moment. In this split second, I grabbed Allie's hand and we ran as fast as we could to our resort. I could feel my face bleeding and my ribs were killing me. I looked back one time as we were running, and we could see the two couples standing there, not chasing us. We got back to the resort, locked the doors, and turned the lights off. It was horrible. I still don't know why, but we didn't call the police. Obviously, in hindsight, we should have contacted the authorities right away, but at that moment, we didn't want to bring any attention at all to our location. The next day, we checked out early from the hotel so we could leave for home. The entire time we loaded up the car and checked out, we kept looking over our shoulder. Every person out of the corner of our eye we assumed was the beach couples. We didn't want to risk running into these mysterious strangers again. As we were leaving the hotel and walking to our car, we saw the two girls on the corner of the street. They didn't see us. We didn't know what to do. We got into the car and drove off. As we were pulling out of the parking lot, we had to pass the corner where they were standing. As we drove by them, both girls noticed us. They smiled and waved like we were old friends. Once we hit the road, Allie called the resort and informed them what happened. They apologized and said they would look into the matter. I'm not sure if anything was actually ever done. I realized that this isn't your typical scary ghost story or whatever, but it was so much worse. We're lucky we got out of there with no physical injuries. Unfortunately, the memory of this horrible night will most likely stay with me forever.